Okay, so imagine this. You're planning that amazing trip overseas, maybe, or perhaps this great job opportunity abroad just popped up.
Yeah.
You're looking at flights, you're thinking about packing, but then you hit that really crucial step for a lot of international travel,
Hmm.
the visa application.
It's definitely a big one. Trying to figure out the whole visa thing can feel, well, pretty complicated sometimes. Like trying to read a different language almost with all the rules and interviews.
Right.
So our mission today is basically to, cut through some of that confusion. We've looked at a bunch of sources, articles, some research, even what people have said about their own experiences. And we want to pull out the really key bits of info for you so you get a clear idea of what a visa actually is, what the main types are, and, this is the big one, how to handle that interview successfully.
Yeah, and we'll throw in some maybe surprising details and good strategies too, so hopefully you'll feel, much more prepared. So let's get into it. First off, when we say visa, what are we really talking about? Is it just a stamp?
Well, yeah, fundamentally, it is an official thing, usually a stamp or a sticker right in your passport.
Okay.
And it legally allows you to travel to and enter a specific country, but only for a certain amount of time and for a specific reason. It's basically permission from the country you want to visit.
Gotcha. And for the U.S. specifically, there are, well, tons of visas, but maybe we can focus on a few common ones for people just visiting temporarily.
Good idea. Yeah, these are generally called non-immigrant visas. That just means they're for temporary stays, and the whole idea is you're expected to go back home afterwards.
Right.
The B2 visa is probably the one most people know. That's your standard tourist visa for holidays, visiting family, maybe getting medical treatment in the U.S.
Okay, the classic tourist one. And then there are visas that let you stay a bit longer, but still temporarily, like for school or exchange programs.
Exactly. So you've got the F1 visa. That's specifically for foreign students coming to study. Could be for a year-long exchange or maybe 2 or 3 years for an MBA or something. Your stay is tied to being enrolled in that school.
Makes sense.
And then there's the J1 visa. That's more for temporary exchange visitors. Often it's for like short-term work programs, maybe cultural exchanges, could be just 2 or 3 months, and then you head back.
So the key for all of these is temporary, and you have to intend to leave.
That's the absolute core principle, intent to return.
Okay, so understanding the types is step one. But for a lot of these U.S. visas, the process involves actually talking to someone, right? An interview with a visa officer.
Yes, exactly.
Maybe we can sort of walk through a simulated interview to get a feel for how it works and what they're really asking.
Great idea. Let's set up a scenario. Imagine someone applying for that B2 tourist visa we just talked about.
Okay.
And their reason seems really straightforward, really genuine. They want to visit their brother in Minneapolis because he just had a new baby.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. And they plan to stay for about 3 weeks. They've even got their return flight booked already, say for March 26th.
Okay. Sounds reasonable.
And the brother is actually sponsoring the trip, offering to cover costs, and the applicant plans to stay right there at his house. So on the surface, it looks like a really solid, low-risk case,
Yeah, it really does seem pretty straightforward. And let's say this applicant, they've done their homework. They come prepared with proof of what we call ties to their home country.
Uh-huh. What kind of things?
Well, they own their own house.
Okay.
They've even arranged for neighbors to look after their dog, which kind of shows they plan to come back to the dog, right?
Oh, right. Good detail.
They own a car. And importantly, they have a steady job, say as an engineer at a company called Turnell. And they only have 3 weeks of vacation approved. So they have to get back to work.
Okay, that's strong. Job ties are big.
And they also show they're financially stable on their own. They bring bank statements, maybe showing some investments, a decent balance.
Wow, okay. So, clear reason to visit, fixed return date, place to stay, and lots of evidence connecting them back home, job, house, finances. Seems like a slam dunk for a B2.
You'd think so, right? A really solid application. But here's where the source material we looked at got a bit, well, creative. And definitely fictional.
Uh-oh. What happened in the simulation?
So in this scenario, despite all this strong evidence, the applicant gets denied the B2 tourist visa.
It's denied. With all that, why?
It doesn't say why.
Yeah.
But then there's this totally unrealistic twist. The visa officer suddenly says something like, "Congratulations, you're the millionth applicant. You win."
You're kidding.
Nope. And then grants them a resident visa instead, like a green card or similar.
Okay, hold on. That would never happen in a real U.S. consulate, ever.
Absolutely not. Zero chance. That's complete fantasy land stuff from the source.
Right.
But even though it's silly, It actually makes a really important point, doesn't it? It highlights just how different a temporary tourist visa, like a B2, is from a resident visa. They are not interchangeable. You can't just get one by accident instead of the other.
No way. Totally different requirements, different intentions, different processes. That story, while funny, underscores that you apply for what you need, and you need to meet those specific requirements.
Exactly. So that little fictional detour aside, let's dig into some of the key words that came up, because understanding them is crucial. Sponsoring, for example.
Right. So what does it actually mean if someone, like the brother in our story, is sponsoring your visa trip?
Basically, it means they're formally telling the consulate, I'll take financial responsibility for this person while they're here. They're guaranteeing that the visitor will have enough money for their expenses, food, accommodation, whatever, and won't need, public assistance or end up stranded. Think about parents sponsoring their teenage kids' trip.
Got it. They're backing you financially. Okay, what about an invitation letter? That comes up a lot too, especially if you're visiting people.
Yeah, that's a formal letter. It could be from a friend, a relative, maybe even a company if it's a business trip. And it officially invites you to come visit them for a specific reason.
And you show this to the visa officer.
Absolutely. It helps confirm why you're going. Adds weight to your story.
Makes sense. Okay, next term. Financially independent. Our applicant showed this with their bank statements.
Right. That just means you have your own money to pay for your trip. You don't need the sponsor, necessarily, or anyone else to fund your travel, your stay, your expenses while you're in the U.S. You can handle it yourself.
Okay, self-sufficient. And tied into that is assets, right? Like the house and car.
Exactly. Assets are basically valuable things you own back in your home country. Your house, your car, maybe stocks, bonds, investments, a business even.
And why do they care about those?
Because assets show stability. They show you have significant things, financially and physically, that you wouldn't just abandon. They're part of your ties back home.
Ah, okay. Which brings us to the big one, ties. You mentioned it before. This seems like the absolute key concept for these temporary visas.
It really, really is. It probably comes up in almost every interview for a non-immigrant visa. Ties are all the things that will tie you to your home country.
Like anchors.
Yeah, exactly. They're the reasons the visa officer believes you will leave the U.S. when your visa expires. They're trying to gauge your non-immigrant intent, basically proving you don't plan to stay illegally.
I liked the analogy one source used. Imagine a strong rope connecting you back to your home. And on that rope are things like your house, your job, maybe your spouse, your kids, things that pull you back that stop you from just, running away and staying in the U.S.
That's a great visual. So concrete examples, we mentioned a house, a job. What else counts?
Oh, lots of things. Having a spouse or children back home is a huge tie. Significant money in a bank account there. Owning property, like we said. Having a mortgage you're paying off. Even a wedding certificate can be part of it.
A letter from your work confirming you're employed and expected back.
Definitely. That's a very strong tie. Anything that demonstrates deep roots and commitments in your home country.
So understanding ties is clearly vital.
Yeah.
But is there maybe a common mistake people make when trying to show their ties? Is just having the documents enough?
That's a really good point. A lot of people think, okay, I have my house deed, I have my job letter, I'm good. But it's not just about having the paper. You also need to be able to talk about them confidently and clearly. The officer's reading you as much as the documents. They're assessing if your story feels genuine, if your reasons for returning seem sincere.
It's about credibility, too.
Absolutely. Sometimes denials happen not because the person lacked ties on paper, but because something felt off in the interview, maybe some inconsistency, or they just didn't convincingly express their intention to return. Even someone with lots of ties might mess up if they don't prepare how to talk about them.
That's super helpful. It's the whole picture, not just the documents. Okay, so now we get the concepts. Let's talk interview strategy. What are the common questions? You're probably going to hear something like, where's your final destination and what is the purpose of your trip to the United States first? Right?
Yeah, very likely, yeah. It's often the opener. Your answer needs to be clear, direct, and match your visa type.
So if you're a tourist,
you say, I'm going on vacation to Florida to visit Disney World, or I'm going sightseeing in California. If visiting family, like our example, I'm going to Minneapolis, Minnesota to visit my brother and meet my new niece.
Be specific. Name the place.
Yes, specificity helps. If it's business, name the company or the conference. Avoid being vague. Vagueness can make them suspicious.
Okay, then a pretty direct one. How long do you plan to remain in the United States? Seems simple enough.
It is simple, but accuracy is crucial here. Your spoken answer must match what you put on your application form.
Ah, consistency.
Exactly. If your form says 3 against, but you say, oh, maybe a month or so, that little difference, that can raise a red flag. Stick to the plan you stated on the form.
Good tip. Okay, now the main event. The question you said is arguably the most important. Tell me about the ties you have to your home country. How do you tackle that one effectively?
This is your moment, right? This is where you directly address their biggest concern, will you go home? So the strategy is be proactive. Don't just answer meekly. Meaning have your evidence ready. You should actively talk about your ties and offer the proof. Don't wait for them to drag it out of you. Bring your documents, have them organized, and be ready to show them.
And on bringing documents, our sources had a really practical piece of advice. Basically, bring everything. Better safe than sorry.
Totally. The tip was essentially bring a huge file full of things, even if the officer never asks for your bank statement or your mortgage papers or your marriage certificate or that letter from your boss. Just having it all there, organized, shows you're serious, you're prepared, and you have nothing to hide about your intention to return.
Yeah, I heard stories, too, people showing up with these massive folders. Sometimes the officer glances at maybe one thing. Sometimes they ask for loads.
Exactly. You just don't know what that particular officer on that day will want to see. Being over-prepared looks good. It shows you understand what's important and you respect the process. It really minimizes doubt.
Leaves less room for them to wonder about your plans.
Precisely.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. So wrapping this up then, we've kind of demystified the U.S. visa process a bit, focusing on that interview. Hopefully you listening now have a much better handle on what non-immigrant visas like the B2, F1, J1 are actually for.
Yeah, and understanding those key terms, sponsoring, assets, financially independent, and especially that absolutely critical concept of ties to your home country.
And we walked through those key interview questions, giving you some strategies for how to answer them, especially that all-important question about your ties and the tip about being super prepared with your documents.
Hopefully this is really practical knowledge you can use, whether you're thinking about a holiday, studying overseas, or maybe taking up a short-term work gig in the States.
Definitely. And, thinking about this whole process, especially the focus on ties and the officer having to judge someone's intent to return, it does make you think, doesn't it?
How so?
Well, we live in a world that's increasingly about data, about hard evidence, right? Yet here's this crucial decision about international travel that still relies so much on a subjective assessment. How does that human judgment, that reading of someone's intentions and attachments, balance against all the objective documents?
That's a fascinating point. What does it say about maybe trust and how we define borders and belonging in the modern world? It's not just about the paperwork. And maybe it makes you think, too. What are your own ties? What really anchors you? And what does that say about you?
Definitely something interesting to ponder. Food for thought for your next potential journey.